I have started to notice that there's two types of smart coworkers as I've been kind of developing in my career. The first type is that stereotypical brilliant asshole kind of vibe where the guy is so freaking smart, can't be fired, but makes everyone miserable at the same time and super insecure about themselves. And then there's the other person who's very open, very approachable, smart, doesn't really know it. Like, you don't get the sense that they know that they're smart, but everyone is pretty much universally liked by everyone. And it wasn't until recently that I started to realize the science behind these two types of coworkers. Now, when I started to figure it out, it was because I read the books Give and Take by Adam Grant and Influence is Your Superpower by Zoe Chance, which are two books that talk about the science behind influence and how to use it to develop in your career or in life in general. So in this video, we're gonna break down influence at work and how to avoid being the smartest person at the office, but also the most hated. If you're new here, my name is Liz. I'm a data science manager at Intel, but I like to film videos on books, but specifically like actions in books. And I like to mix it a little bit with data science, obviously, because my background, and also mix it with a little bit of goal setting and planning because those are the things I'm like super passionate about. But if you're into that, feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, let's jump into it. These next three tips come from the book Give and Take by Adam Grant, who is one of my favorite authors. I've actually read 3 of his books so far, and he's really, really good at communicating his thoughts. But his argument is that there are givers and there's takers. There's also matchers, but we're not gonna worry about those. Givers basically give more than they receive, so they're the ones helping people. They're also the most successful individuals, but there's a twist because they are also the most unsuccessful as well. So if you give too much, you then go at the bottom of the totem pole. So you have to be very careful on that fine line of giving and taking. Now, his first tip is to use powerless speech. Now, this can backfire if you're doing a leadership position, like if you're giving a speech, this backfires. So don't use this if you're giving a speech. But for the most part, if you're working one-on-one with people, you want to use powerless speech. And the reason behind this is vulnerability. You really want to show your vulnerability. You don't want to come across like a know-it-all. And that's the key part here. Now, he gives a couple examples on how to make your speech a little bit more vulnerable. And so he talks about one, which is a disclaimer. So you say, I think this might be a bad idea, but, and then pitch your idea. The other one is like hedges. So saying, I think, or maybe. And then the other one is tag questions, which is more like, that's a good idea, right? And you kind of tag somebody into your questions and into the conversation itself. Now, I actually realize I've been using this for a long time, and I think it's just because I'm insecure about my own thoughts, but my favorite term to say is I like to say, I'm no blah expert. So I'd say, I'm no Python expert, but I think we could use this. And the key word here is we, saying we, I think we could use this. And I also say, I'm no expert, and it becomes kind of a joke. So everyone used to be like, oh yeah, Liz is no expert, you know? Because I'm not like trying to claim I'm an expert, I just have an idea. I also like to say I have an idea, but I have no idea if it will actually work. That's another fun one where it's like, it kind of makes it lighthearted. It opens this whole door of psychological safety where they don't feel like I'm judging them when I say that, because I'm just throwing things out there, right? And I'm making it clear that I'm not telling them what to do. We're just playing. And I think that's the key there, and that's why people aren't necessarily hating on me, and I don't feel like people think that I'm throwing things or shoving things down their throat. His second tip is to actually start asking people for advice. Because it is a form of compliment and people like talking about themselves, that this can actually boost in your favor. So they actually did a study where people who were asked for advice actually rated the person more favorably than if they didn't ask for advice. Now, it has to be genuine. You can't just be like asking random questions and it's very like, you know that they don't really care, you know? So you have to be genuine about it. But I like to say like, hey, I've been working on this tool, but word on the street is you're an expert, would love to sit down. I love using word on the street because it's just like, it keeps it fun and playful. So that is my biggest tip for when you're asking for advice. You don't want it to come across weird, especially if you don't know them. So I like to say word on the street or word around here or whatever, just to get them to be like, oh, you know what, that's kind of funny. Maybe it is maybe it is a compliment because word on the street, like people are talking about me. So I think that's like a key one that you could start using in your work day to day. Now his third tip is actually more towards almost like manipulating somebody into doing something. This sounds like super sketchy, but it's not. Basically, if you want somebody to do something, you ask them about their plans to do it, and not just like generically like, oh, are you planning on doing this? No, you want to know like, when are you gonna wake up? Are you gonna walk your dog? Are you gonna go to the mailbox and get your mail? And then you're gonna go get in your car and then drive to the thing that I'm asking you to do. Like, have them map out the specifics, and they're like more likely to actually follow through on their plans. So that's like an easy way. If you're a manager and you want somebody to do something, you say, walk me through your plan to do it, and they're like more likely to get it done. Now the next 3 tips actually come from Influence is Your Superpower by Zoe Chance. Now she kind of has a different twist where she says that you want to make people feel comfortable saying no, and that actually increases your odds of them saying yes, which is kind of an interesting concept. So we're going to go over 3 things that she suggests. Now her first tip is to focus on the other person. And this is because of this whole thing called psychological reactance, where if we get the slightest hint someone is trying to control us, we just do not like it. So to get around this, we describe what the other person is feeling and then dig deeper. So we say, I see you're hesitant. Can you explain why you are feeling that way? And then the other thing you could do is, I think I might know something that can help, but is that okay if I share it with you? Where you're kind of like giving this, it's okay to say no, but I want to continue forward kind of vibe. And that is supposed to help you basically in sales, influence, all that stuff that you see at work. Now her second tip is very similar to Adam Grant's tips, and it is to ask people about themselves. So instead of asking advice, now you're just asking them about themselves. And apparently this activates the same brain region where sex, money, and chocolate is involved. So people really do like get brain chemicals when they talk about themselves, which naturally when they see you, they're gonna feel that as well. So that's like a quick hack. If you want somebody to like you a little bit more, just start asking questions and just make it about them for a while before you introduce and add more to the conversation about yourself. Her third tip is a little bit more aggressive, and it's asking for what you want. So you have to actually come to the conversation and ask for what you want and not be so indirect about it. So this one is interesting. And I thought the fun example that she used was saying, what will it take to get to my next step in my career? That's a really good performance question. Like, they can't really get around it. So using the whole thing, like, what would it take? What would it take for you to stay here? What would it take for me to grow? What would it take, blah, blah, blah. And that's a really good way to kind of be direct without being like way too aggressive. Now that we've gone over how to get more influence at work, I actually filmed another video about psychological aspects of emails using the books Writing Without Bullshit and Humor Seriously, where I kind of dive into my past managers' emails and show the mistakes that they made and how to fix them, which I thought was pretty interesting. So if you're into that, I will link it here. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time.